Marilyn Monroe's life and tragic early death at the age of just 36 years old have been the source of much fascination. Most recently, on September 28, a fictional film of her life based on the novel of the same name, Blonde, has been released on Netflix. One intriguing element of the late Hollywood star's life was her supposed involvement with the then President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. A Netflix documentary, entitled The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe, The Unheard Tapes, has shed some light on this relationship, as well as the one she had with his brother and former Attorney General, Robert, known as Bobby. Journalist Anthony Summers spent a great deal of time speaking to those who worked with and knew Marilyn with his initial investigation beginning in 1982. The Pulitzer Prize-winning author was initially commissioned to carry out the work by the Daily Express when the case into Marilyn's death was reopened 20 years after the fateful night in August 1962. During his investigation, Mr. Summers garnered insight into Marilyn's entanglement with the Kennedy brothers, which has now been made public. The documentary is based on tape recordings of conversations between him and those who knew Marilyn best. Marilyn first met JFK, the Boston-born 35th U.S. president, in the 50s when he was a senator. But after he went into office in 1961, it is claimed Marilyn had affairs with both Jack, as he was known, and Bobby. The Kennedys had reportedly made an enemy out of American labor union leader, Jimmy Hoffa, who then went looking for dirt on the brothers. The documentary recounts how Mr. Hoffa hired a private investigator, Fred Otish, who organized for both where the Kennedys used to frequent in Malibu with the Hollywood star and Marilyn's home to be bugged. In 1961, Mr. Otish sent his security man, John Danoff, to wire the rooms of the beach house in Malibu and the apartment Marilyn lived in. Mr. Otish, who is recorded speaking to Mr. Summers in the documentary, said, "The bugs were installed in the bedrooms and on the phones. And there were 4 bugs altogether installed out there. They were placed under carpets, in the chandeliers, and in the ceiling fixtures. You could wire a telephone 5 miles from the location." Through this spying, the alleged relationship between Marilyn and Jack was uncovered, with the president referring to the star by her first name, and she, in turn, calling him Prez. Mr. Summers then interviewed Mr. Danoff, who said, "The conversation that came across the receiver, it would fade in and fade out, music, people talking, and I'm then beginning to recognize the voices, the Bostonian accent and Marilyn Monroe. I heard the president call Marilyn Marilyn, and Marilyn calling the president Prez. Any conversations on the phone, some with Jack Kennedy, some with Bobby Kennedy, some with Monroe, some with other people. Arrangements for meetings, there were gonna be rendezvous with Jack Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and Monroe. So there were numerous tapes made on Marilyn and Jack at the beach house in the act of lovemaking." Mr. Danoff then told Mr. Summers that there was a transmitter in the bedroom which would record all the intimate sounds and cuddly talk. Mr. Summers was also told that Marilyn was visited by Bobby at her home many times, with there being more tapes made out of Bobby and Monroe than JFK and Monroe. An FBI file on Marilyn had been created as there were fears over her supposed connection with communism and her being a leftist, as she was described in FBI documents, with it being the Cold War at the time, Mr. Summers explained. FBI agents had been watching her, and Mr. Summers said she was seen as a volatile creature running to her psychiatrist, who chatted on the phone to all and sundry, making her exactly the wrong woman to be on terms with the president and the attorney general. following her tragic death in August 1962, rumors circulated that Marilyn was murdered by the FBI. However, Mr. Summers found this was not the case. Prior to her death, Marilyn was told to never contact the Kennedy brothers again, allegedly by Bobby, which left her hurt. Her longtime friend, Arthur James, told Mr. Summers that it was their cutting her off which killed her, as he described it as the beginning of the last day. Mr. Otish told Mr. Summers that Bobby Kennedy had called her the night of her death and that they had an argument. Marilyn had, according to Mr. Otish, told Bobby to leave her alone and that she felt passed around and like a piece of meat. Marilyn died in August 1962 from probable suicide following an overdose. While Mr. Summers found that Marilyn had not been murdered, he alleged that the circumstances surrounding her death were deliberately concealed. He said in the documentary, "If you say to me, why were those circumstances covered up? I would say that what the evidence suggests is that it was covered up because of her connection with the Kennedy brothers." The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe, The Unheard Tapes, which is based upon Mr. Summers' book, Goddess, was directed by Emma Cooper and is available on Netflix.